Welcome back and thanks for staying with us on KUTV Primetime News. Remember, you can share thoughts with us on our social media platforms on Facebook, KUTV Kenya, and on Twitter, KUTV_Kenya. Suicide among young people continues to be a serious problem. The transition from childhood to adulthood requires a more cautious approach. While no teen is immune, there are factors that make some adolescents vulnerable than others. Today, we had a discussion with Dr. Lydiah Maingi, a lecturer at Kenyatta University in the Department of Psychology, to deliberate on the menace of suicide among teenagers. Take a look. Suicide is a major public health concern. While suicide has become common across the population, the increase among the youth has outpaced all other age groups. Statistics indicate that suicide is the second leading cause of death among children and adolescents. There is therefore an urgent call to action in order to save this generation. Tonight, we are joined by Dr. Lydiah Maingi, a lecturer at Kenyatta University in the Department of Psychology, to help us break down this suicide menace. Dr. Maingi,
yes,
thank you so much for dedicating your time to be with us.
Thank you.
Maybe introduce yourself to the audience, they get to know who Dr. Lydiah Maingi is.
Okay,
Right.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Lydiah Maingi, and as Omodi said, I am a lecturer at Psychology Department here in Kenyatta University, and I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, right into our discussion. Statistics indicate that suicide among the youth and the teenagers is on the rise, and terming it as the second leading cause of death. What could be the reason for this?
Okay, thank you for that question. First of all, let's also note that suicide is on the increase across all ages, even though that suicide has always been on the, it's more common among the adolescents, among the teenagers, and it's because transitions are all challenging, and teenage is a time of transition. So it comes with some challenges, it comes with some complexities. Teenagers are trying to adjust to life and to being responsible. A lot of expectations among young people expecting them to act as adults. At the same time, they have academics to pursue, they have their identity to deal with. And of course, the other things is that sometimes specific teenagers have their own issues that they are dealing with. You'll find that suicide is common among people who are dealing with other challenges and not necessarily the challenges that are common to every other human being. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what are some of the risk factors that are involved with the youth and the adolescents at this stage of life?
I think if a young person is going through a crisis, let's say they have a problem, a traumatic experience that they have gone through, maybe they have lost a dear one, a family member, such teenagers are likely to be at risk of maybe having suicidal tendencies. Teenagers or young people who do not have coping skills, life skills per se is always a protective factor against most mental health problems, and suicide is a mental health problem. People who are having a low self-esteem are likely to be, have a high risk of suicide. Maybe if a teenager is going through, let's say, a family crisis, divorce is happening at home, there is violence at home, such are some risk factors for suicide. And also, if they are coming from a family where there could have been someone else who have committed suicide, and then maybe they are going through a challenge, then suicide becomes one of the options that they have at the back of their mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about all the other social illnesses. We can say of teenage pregnancies. We find suicide is a topic that is not so common, is not open to discussion. Why is it that people are normally refraining from this topic, talking about suicide?
And just before I answer that, let me say that also teenagers who are having other mental health problems are more likely to commit suicide than teenagers who do not have mental health problems. Let alone to mention other problems, social problems, like you have said, teen pregnancies and all that. Suicide, when you talk about suicide, you're talking about death. Death is not a common topic on our tables. I think there are cultural, religious kind of barriers. I think talking about death looks like you're inviting death per se. So people shy away from talking about death. People are not really willing to discuss death. And I would say that people do not usually discuss mental health problems very regularly. And so among other mental health problems, suicide is not discussed. So I'll say that it's because it's not a common topic. For some cultures, it's almost a taboo to talk about it, because why talk about death? Who wants to talk about death? And it looks like when I talk about death, then I am kind of beckoning it. So I would say there are those some kind of stereotype about death, and so suicide really being about death, then people rarely talk about it. Just as you said, people do not easily discuss these other social problems. We want to discuss good things, we want to talk about the things that make us feel happy, which is good, but it's also important to talk about serious issues that also happen.
Sure. Now, so how can we break down this? Because statistics have shown that is now the second leading cause of death. Means we need to talk about it. We need to enlighten people about it. So how can we break this so that it now becomes something that people would want to talk about, something that people would want to find solutions to? How can we now come into play to help in this?
For me, I think that we need to normalize talking about mental health, because suicide is not a problem on its own.
Right.
Suicide really is associated with other problems. So if we are talking, for example, about depression, then we might not avoid talking about suicide. We might not avoid talking about death. So we need to talk about illnesses, just like we talk about other physical illnesses. We need to talk about mental health across the society, right from the family, in school, in institutions, in our workplaces. So we need to normalize the discussions about mental health problems. And that way, I believe, then we are likely to find ourselves talking about suicide and, educating people about, other mental health problems, so that by the end of the day, then we avoid getting to that extreme, scenario where we have people committing suicide.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, talking about suicide, is it possible to predict that someone is likely to commit suicide? And if that is the case, what could be the early signs that someone is contemplating suicide?
Yeah, suicide is something you can tell that is likely to happen. And like I said, that suicide doesn't just come on its own. Someone doesn't wake up on a morning and decide that they want to commit suicide. So chances are there are other problems that have been taking place. So you're likely to find, like I said, if a young person is having another mental health problem, they're having a mood disorder, maybe they're having depression, or they're having a crisis in the family, they went through some loss, they have lost maybe a family member. So you can tell, how is this person progressing through this problem? Do they look like they are withdrawing from people? So one of the ways to tell, for example, is a person who is withdrawing from social interactions and maybe keeping to themselves for long. If a person who was having a problem, a low mood for a long time, then all of a sudden looks cheerful and like they're happy, like a miracle has happened and their problem has been solved, then you need to start thinking, could they have resolved to commit suicide? Because what happens when somebody is going through a decision of committing suicide and they finally make it, then they have resolved. At the back of their mind, they have reached a point where they have resolved, they know what they want to do, and so they look like they're brilliant, they're happy, because a decision to commit suicide is not an easy decision.
Sure.
It is not an easy decision. So someone goes through some low time when they are thinking about it and negotiating it. So when you realize someone all of a sudden look happy, they look like now they have come out of their problem, then that's a sign that the worst could be about to happen. If someone starts to talk about death, they keep talking about death, or they start talking about one of these days I'll just disappear, or they start insinuating things like like that. You know, like they're talking about not being there. You know, you might hear someone saying, well, when I'm not there, you can think about how to do about it, or how to go about it, or can you imagine if I'm not here? So they start talking about their absence. They could be talking about death. They could also be starting to give their valuable things. You know, you find somebody, they valued their phone, they have given it out. Of course, with adults, they valued their house, they have started to give it out or something like that. And that tells you that they could be planning suicide. Right. Yeah, just but to mention it.
Now, we've seen incidences where people are committing suicide, but then there are no early warning signs that this person could be contemplating to commit suicide. Like the latest example you're seeing in the country, the Nakuru doctor, James Gakara, who is suspected to have killed the two children and attempted to commit suicide and recently died in the ICU. Now, what can we say about this now? Someone just committing suicide without anyone suspecting that such a thing could take place?
Well, I wouldn't exactly know what to comment on that specific case, but I believe there is no suicide that just happens.
Right.
There must have been signs. Either the signs were not read well, or they were very hidden. But if, like for example, such a family, they start interrogating, they're likely to find that there are some things, pointers here and there. So I would really want to say that there are signs. Maybe my question would be, what has been the interaction at the family level? If people are close, you know, they are likely to see something happening. They're likely to see some change. So I think, again, you know, with COVID-19, there are a lot of things that are happening. So, but I think we need to be more sensitive with each other. We need to, if you see somebody withdrawing, try to get them to talk, try to talk to people. Because I do want to believe that there is no suicide that just happens. Unless, again, this person has been hiding it from the rest of the people. But even then, is there something else that had happened to them before? Is there a crisis that had happened? Are they having a problem that they were struggling with, and maybe they had not kind of disclosed to the people who are close to them? But in most cases, if people are socially engaging, then they should be able to see it coming.
Right. Now, there's been this allegation that there is some form of suicide that runs down across the lineage of a family. You mentioned it at some point.
Yeah.
Now, how can someone break from that lineage where people have been committing suicide or something? Now you want to create some form of fresh blood out of it. Is it really possible for that? For someone?
First of all, let's clear this.
Right.
It is not genetic. It may run in the family, but it's not genetic.
Right.
What happens? What happens is that people learn from the family, right? And like I had said, one of the risk factors of suicide is mental health problems. And mental health problems are genetic. So chances are that another person in the family is likely to have that mental health problem. And it's important to know that there are some mental health problems that are more likely to lead to suicide. So the genetic predisposition is not about suicide itself, but maybe about mental health problems. So that you find that the mental, like for example, depression runs in the family. It's genetic. So, and what may also happen is that somebody who is contemplating suicide, if there's someone else who committed suicide in the family, it feels a little normal.
Sure.
They are likely to reason, well, even my dad committed suicide. So there's the aspect of learning, and you know, family is an institution where a lot of learning takes place. So there's modeling, you know, it's then seen as a method of dealing with problems. So they learn, they model those other people who committed suicide. And it is good to note here that sometimes when people are talking about suicide and other people are having issues where they are thinking like, what do I do to get out of problems? And suicide is really mentioned so much, then sometimes they see it as an option. When they hear it, then you know, the more they hear it, the more they think about it. So it is not about the genetic aspect of suicide, but the other risk factors that can lead to suicide.
Right.
So I don't think you can kind of stop the lineage per se, because you can never run out of your family genes, but I think people can unlearn. There are things that can be unlearned. They are coping. People can be helped to cope. One of the things maybe we shall be saying as a preventative measure is to teach people life skills.
Right.
You know, how do I cope with problems? What do I do when I have challenges? And I think one of the reasons why we are seeing a lot of suicide in the society now is because of some of the challenges that have come with the COVID-19 pandemic. And people do not have the coping skills, or they're having a low self-esteem. So I think those are the factors to address, and not necessarily the genetic aspect.
Now, thank you for that. Let us try to pin suicide to gender.
Yeah.
We've seen most cases, we are seeing men contemplating suicide more than their female counterparts. Why is that so?
Let me tell you the truth. The truth is that women contemplate suicide more, but men die of suicide more.
Right.
Right? So it's not that the men are the ones contemplating more. Women are actually more likely to be suicidal, to have suicidal ideas, to even attempt suicide. But what makes the difference is the methods that they use. Men are likely to be more aggressive, to be more use more violent methods. Women are likely to use more subtle methods. Women are likely to use, for example, they're likely to use more of prescription pills and overdose themselves. Men are likely to use maybe more brutal methods, like maybe jumping over in the buildings. And you are a media personality. If you listen to the reports we hear about people who jumped off buildings, hardly will you hear a woman did.
It's mostly men.
Yeah, it's mostly men. But so most women are rescued before they die, because they are using certain methods, so they're not likely to end up dying. But because of attempting suicide maybe a number of times, they will eventually, because one of the other risk factors of suicide is suicide attempts. People who have attempted suicide are more likely to finally commit suicide than a person who has never attempted. So that is the reason why we have more men dying of suicide than women.
But as you said, now it's more women contemplating.
And even attempting.
Right.
But more men dying.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, as we try to wind up this discussion, what are some of the best preventive measures that we can talk about as the solutions or the preventive measures for suicide in the society?
Okay, I think I want to go back to what I mentioned about life skills.
Yes.
We need to help people, young people, everybody develop life skills. And you notice that life skills is something that is being taught in school, but sometimes not taken as seriously as the other subjects as we know them, because it's not going to be examined. Maybe CBC it will be examined. But life skills are the ones that help us to handle life. You just mentioned about a doctor, so that means they had passed some well in subjects. But what about life skills? We need life skills. We need to know how to deal with luck. We need to know how to deal with challenges. How do I deal with loss? How do I deal with, relationship breakups and so on? So one of the preventative measures is enhancing life skills, teaching life skills. We need also to boost family support. And, being the Africans we are known for being more of a community, but we are losing that, becoming more individualized and so on. And that doesn't work for preventing suicide. So we need to, one of the things that can prevent is family support. When somebody is going through a challenge, but they know that somebody is going to listen to them, is there for them, they're less likely to commit suicide. Peer support, and you see we have become people who are just on the technology, on the phones, throughout keeping to ourselves. So we need to be able to balance that by moving out socially. So an aspect of social skills, and like I said, talk about mental health. Let's talk about it, let's discuss it, address issues like drug and substance abuse, which are more likely to lead to suicide. So we need to normalize mental health. We need to stop stigmatizing those who have, been diagnosed with mental health. We need to make it normal to go to see a psychologist, a counselor. Many times when someone is told to see a counselor, they start thinking, oh, now I'm mad, I'm psychotic. And, it's seen as extreme. But we need to move away from that and realize that our mind can get affected just like our bodies can. So we normalize it, we stop stigmatizing, and then enhance kind of health-seeking behavior. Because what happens is that when I have a problem, I keep to myself. I'm not telling anybody. I'm not going to the hospital. So we need to help people feel normal, to look for solutions and to look for help.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, so what are some of the avenues that, let's say people who are having some challenges, but they need to open up? You can't just open up to anyone. So what are some of the best avenues that we probably someone can reach out to help concerning this?
Okay. Before we even think about mental health specialists, we have actually said at the family level, we should reach out to one another. If you have a problem, don't shut up. Please talk to someone. Talk to that person you think cares. But then when it comes to problems, I would say the first place to move to is to the nearest hospital. Don't worry whether they know what to do with the mental health problem. Just go and tell them this is how I'm feeling. And chances are they will refer you to the appropriate professional. But it's also important to know that there are counselors you can reach out to, there are psychologists, there are psychiatrists, and once you reach out to one, they will refer you to the appropriate one if you have not gone to the appropriate one. For me, I think the most important thing is for people to feel that when I'm stressed, it's a problem, I need to seek for help. When I am having anxiety, it is a problem, I need to seek for help. If I don't know where to go, just go to the primary health center near you and tell them that how you're feeling. They'll refer you to the right place.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, as we come to wrap this discussion, what could be your final words to the youth and the society at large who are listening to you concerning this topic of suicide?
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. I think what I would want to say is that suicide is a mental health problem. It is happening, it happens, and it can happen to anyone, just like any other mental health problem. What I would say to us is that whenever you are in a problem, feel free to seek for help. Seeking help is not a weakness. Seeking for help is a strength. And you will always realize that the people who are helped out of a problem are always the best source of help. So I encourage us to support each other at the family level. Let's look out for each other. Let's find out how one another we are doing in the family. That family member who is far away, call them and find out how they are doing. And when we find like somebody is having a problem, just try to find out. People are looking for someone to listen to them. People are looking for someone who can, give them some time, some shoulder to lean on, as people say. So be that shoulder. And I believe as we reach out to one another more, then we are more likely to be a healthy society. And let's not stigmatize people who have attempted suicide. Let's realize, just like we have suffered another ailment, a physical ailment, so have they suffered. And let's make it, normal. Let's make people feel normal. Let's make people feel that it's okay to talk about their problems. So I would really say, support each other and look out for each other.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lydiah Maingi, for your time, dedicating your time to be with us here. We hope to have you here again and again to talk about other social illnesses that are in the society. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much also for having me.
Right.
Yeah, let's keep talking about it until we are all educated about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hope to see you again and again.
All right. As you call me.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your valued company throughout the discussion. That has been Dr. Lydiah Maingi, a lecturer at Kenyatta University in the Department of Psychology, helping us break down the menace of suicide among teenagers. And with that discussion, we are taking another very short break here on KUTV Primetime News. We still have much for you, so keep it right here. See you on the other side.